Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for coming back for part 2 of the Box of Chocolate series. This video is a little bit more about me talking about what it was like to grow up in an adopted family. I was adopted at birth. If you want to know more about my adoption process in my younger years, please go back and watch part 1. In this video, I'll be talking about my teenage years, around 13 to 15, which means there'll probably be a part 3, so I hope you come back. Now moving on into my teenage years, it's 1992. I'm 13 years old, I'm starting junior high, and I had met a lot of new people. Most of my friends from elementary school went to a different junior high school, and I still kept in touch with them. I still keep in touch with them to this day. They're really good friends of mine. But once we hit our teenage years, most of us separated and had to go to different schools. Anyway, 1992 was great. We had the Dr. Dre album, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, you name it, in living color. We had plenty to talk about. So in the middle of my 7th grade year, I remember my mom got cancer again. So she had it once when I was 6, and now she has it again at 13 years old. This time it was a little bit more crazy. It was around September when she did get her diagnosis. In October, they started planning the surgery. Given I had only been in school for a couple months, and now I'm taking time out of school and worried about my mother and her cancer and everything that was going on with my family. The end of October rolls around and they schedule her surgery on October 31st, Halloween. For a 13-year-old boy and his mother having a major surgery on Halloween night, it gave me all kinds of mixed emotions. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't think of that as a good omen at all. Everyone knows Halloween's a creepy time, scary, you know, and I didn't think that having a major surgery on Halloween, it just didn't seem like a very good, positive thing. Still, the day of the surgery, my mother didn't want me to stick around. She didn't want me sitting in the waiting room on Halloween. I didn't think of it as a very good time to be having a surgery, but what can I say? I didn't really ask many questions like we've talked about. My father took me home. On the way home, he asked me what I wanted to do. Did I want to trick or treat? Did I want to pass out candy? We didn't have anything. Did I want to carve a pumpkin? So on the way home, we stopped. I got a pumpkin. I still remember sitting on the floor carving a pumpkin for about 3 hours, hoping to hear something from the doctor saying that the surgery went well. Still to this day, Halloween is always traumatizing to me. I still think of Halloween as part of my mother's surgery, part of cancer. The crazy thing, October is breast cancer month, so I do get a lot of reminders of those times. It was definitely traumatizing for me. It was something that I don't wish on anyone. Cancer, again, was a big part of my life. My mother did survive. She made it through the surgery and did come home, made it home. I still remember standing bedside, sleeping on the floor, doing whatever I could to help nurse her back to health. And honestly, folks, I should have entered the medical field because I did a lot of things that most 13-year-old boys would never experience. I changed drain bulbs, bandages, medicines, knew the names of medicines, had to call in prescriptions, you name it. Because my father was the only one working and he did have to commute back and forth to Los Angeles, it was kind of hard for us to get help in order to nurse her back to health. So, needless to say, when it comes to most responsibilities nowadays, I don't even want to handle them. I'm a big kid at heart. Anyway, my 7th grade year was almost over. My mother was feeling a lot better, getting better, more on her feet and able to move around. I had to go back to school, of course. The way that my parents made me feel a little bit better so I could be reached if some sort of emergency was to happen, they bought me a beeper.
I can't believe it, it's my first blind date.
Oh, I do it all the time.
Really? Woo! You guys meet? Greg, Janice?
We sure did.
That was stupid.
great.
This is Smart, a beeper service for just $1.99 a month. From who else? Smart Beep. Call 1-800-BEEP-199 for other smart stuff, like directions.
We've got chemistry here. You feel it?
I felt it.
All right, Janice.
I love pagers. I miss pagers. I still wish we had pagers. Given the fact that I am filming this on my cell phone, no offense cell phone, but I miss pagers. They were awesome. They beep a couple times, you check it. There is no way for the person that sent you the message to know if you checked it, if you're gonna call back, if you're gonna text back, if the text had been seen. They can't find you with GPS location. There's no possible way. If you didn't want to be bothered, you click it and say, okay, well, whatever, I'll do it later. They were great. Nowadays, of course, everyone knows they can see if you even received a text message, looked at it, checked it, where your location is, you name it. I mean, we all can be found, folks. But I appreciate you watching my videos on your cell phone anyway. Thanks. Moving on. So I made it through 7th grade. Met a lot of neat, interesting people, and a lot of them were Filipino. Other than Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis and Crystal Pepsi, a lot of those people were into the same things that I was into, such as the breakdancing and the music and the hip hop scene and graffiti art and all kinds of stuff. So I met a lot of good friends. The summer before 8th grade, I got to hang out with a lot of these people, a lot of Filipinos, like I said. Got to go to birthday parties in their garage, and I remember breakdancing in the garage. They had lights, a DJ, awesome food, show pals and lumpia. Oh my gosh, if you've never tried that stuff, folks, give Filipino food a try. Vietnamese food is amazing as well. I met some Cambodian people, you name it. Their parents were very, very nice. They were always real polite and would just keep feeding you. It was almost an insult to them if you didn't eat their food, so I tried everything. And the funny thing is, not knowing my ethnicity and much about myself, I thought, hey, they're into the same things I'm into. I love this food. Maybe I'm Filipino. You should have seen my haircut. I had bangs that came down here and just throw them over. It was crazy. But anyway, the summer of 8th grade was great. Like I said, we went to a lot of my friends lived in this neighborhood, and my parents started to look at houses in that neighborhood. And I never thought anything of it because they were always looking for new houses, given the fact that the house we did live in was real small. It was only a 2-bedroom house in Elsinore. They were looking for something bigger and better. Towards the end of my 8th grade year, right before summer, is when my grandmother passed away. And that was really hard for my mom and my family, you know, given the fact that she had just gone through cancer. Now there's a death in the family. My grandmother was hilarious. She used to give me $5 just for taking her trash out. My grandmother was, of course, my mom's mother, so she was very upset. I still remember though, once I did find out that my grandmother had passed away, my parents took me out to dinner. During this dinner, they sat me down and talked to me for a little while and told me that my mother and I would be going back to Louisiana for my grandmother's funeral. And we would be stopping in Texas. I would get to meet my mom's brother's daughter and my cousins and so on, and I would get to meet them, and they would all be coming to the funeral with us. So we were having dinner, we had talked about this trip, and I agreed, of course, to go. Now, after the dinner, my parents, like I had said, they had spent some time in the neighborhood where all my friends had lived. They said they had a surprise for me. We had looked at this house 3 or 4 times in the neighborhood. I had fell in love with it. I still remember it had a big garage, upstairs, downstairs, way bigger than the house we had in Elsinore. 4 bedrooms, cement basketball court, pool, and of course it was in the neighborhood where all my friends had lived. So for a 3rd time, they take me back to this house. And they told me that they are doing their best to purchase it. So I'm assuming my parents came across some money or inherited some money from my grandmother. I didn't know. I didn't ask questions. Like I said, I didn't know anything about that. But they had purchased this house in the neighborhood that I had loved to spend time in anyway. I was extremely happy to be spending more time in that neighborhood and to get out of the smaller neighborhood that I had lived in, smaller house that we had lived in, and to be moving into a neighborhood that I was familiar with and I had a lot of friends in. Right before our trip, my mother wanted this 1984 Cadillac Seville Slantback. I think it was a Seville. And crazy looking car. The back end, the trunk would slant, or it kind of just fell off. Beautiful looking though. It was like a copper orange. It had every option available. And again, this is 1992 and this is a 1984 Cadillac. It was a one owner car. The people that owned it was an older couple, and I don't think they ever sat in the back seat. It still had the plastic wrap on the rear seatbelts. Beautiful car, every option, carriage top, Rolls-Royce grille, the spoke rims, the pillow top, leather, you name it. And my mom loved that car, that was hers. So we have a house in escrow, a Cadillac, and my dad ended up buying, supposedly for me, a 1991 Chrysler LeBaron convertible. It was cool. I mean, I was just happy to have a convertible. It was kind of neat. It was my first time riding a convertible car, and it was supposedly going to be mine when I turned 15, 16 years old. So, like I said, right before our trip, I have a new house in a neighborhood that I wanted to spend time in. We had 2 new vehicles, so I was assuming they came across some money. I didn't ask how or where or why, but times were good, and I had looked forward to the future. So, my mother and I pack our bags, and we head out for this trip to Texas, to Houston, Texas. And I remember flying into Texas, and whenever we went to exit the plane, they had the roll-up steps to exit the plane. My mother didn't tell me about the humidity. My first step off that plane in Houston, Texas was a shock. I had never experienced humidity. Still to this day can't stand the humidity. I live in Florida now. But I still remember saying to her as she slowly walked off the plane, asking her, "Whoa, what's up with the weather? Is it always like this?" And she said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you about the humidity." I turned around and tried to get back on the plane. It was ridiculous. If any of you folks are watching this video and live in Texas, I feel for you. I don't know how you play sports. I don't know how you do anything. I don't know how you check your mail sometimes, but wow, that is crazy. So we get picked up by my aunt, my cousin that I had never met. He was around 6 years old. I feel really bad because when he did meet me, and I remember before the trip, they had called and looked forward to meeting me because I played soccer. And he had just started playing soccer himself. We got back to the house and settled in for a second, and I still remember him wanting me to go outside and play soccer with him. I did my best, folks. Like I said, that humidity got me quick. I played maybe 15 minutes of soccer in the front yard and was done. I couldn't handle it. It is way too much. A couple days passed, and we needed to take our trip to Louisiana, to Westlake, Louisiana. Now, this is where my grandmother and my mother lived. My mom went to high school out there, and she looked forward to showing me some of the things that she did as a child. Westlake, Louisiana, if any of my friends are watching this from Louisiana, that is one small town. We have to keep in mind that I came from Riverside County, California to Westlake, Louisiana. I still think to myself every time I see the movie Varsity Blues is how Westlake was. They loved football. Everything would shut down. And by everything, I don't mean much. There was a Dairy Queen, a McDonald's, a Popeyes. I never had Popeyes. I had never had Dairy Queen. And a Market Basket. That was their grocery store. Other than that, there was houses and a skating rink. That was all that was in Westlake, Louisiana. Westlake is right over the bridge from Lake Charles. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar where Lake Charles, Louisiana is. Turn on the Weather Channel, that's where most hurricanes are going, if they're not hitting me here in Florida. So anyway, I did my best to embrace the Louisiana experience. I tried Popeyes, dirty rice. My mom called it dirty rice. Still like Popeyes, good stuff. Gumbo, you name it. Drove around. I had never seen so many trees. Moss, I had never seen moss on trees before. It was just green and humid. So it was a good time. My mom had a friend out there that we were staying with, Miss Annette, and she had grandkids that were close to my age. I went to the skating rink out there once or twice and met a few friends and told them that I would write. Back then we didn't have email, so I got their addresses and we would write. The crazy thing about Westlake, Louisiana. And again, I said it's a very, very small town. The day of the funeral, the newspaper was there, writing an article on my mother, me, and the death of my grandmother. That made the newspaper. Anyway, I did what I could to embrace the fact that I was in a new state. I was doing my best to be there for my mother and experience the things that she wanted me to experience. But honestly, folks, I just wanted to get back home, move into that new house, sit in my new convertible, and move past all the negative that had been happening lately. After the funeral, we went back to Texas. And then the following day, my mom and I packed up and we flew home. I had a great experience in Louisiana and a good experience in Texas, and tried my best to embrace the culture and try new food and see the things that my mom wanted me to see, such as her old high school and so on. But honestly, I couldn't wait to get home. I couldn't wait to start packing and move into this new home, and really looked forward to the future and starting high school. We got home on a Friday, and I remember not even unpacking before I was on the phone calling my friends to see what we were going to do for the weekend. We had made plans for Saturday to go to the movies, spend some time at the arcade next door, and I think we watched maybe 3 or 4 movies in 4 or 5 hours at the arcade. It was great. It was a good time. I was happy to be home. After a while, after about 5 or 6 hours, I called my mom, dad, whoever, to come pick me up. My mom shows up and she looked upset, and I couldn't understand why. We had just, other than the funeral, we had so much to look forward to, and maybe it was a little selfish of me. Maybe I was just a little happy to be home and all these new things happening, but I couldn't understand why she was upset. In the parking lot of the movie theater, I asked her, "Mom, what's going on? You look upset." And she says, "Well, I need to talk to you." And I thought to myself, uh-oh, what happened now? It always seemed like something, and things were just starting to get good. But at the same time, what could possibly happen? She drops a bomb on me, folks. Again, I had only been home for not even 24 hours. And she tells me in the parking lot of that movie theater that my father's moving out, that they are more than likely getting a divorce, and she didn't know what we were gonna do for the future. It's crazy to go from complete happiness to a complete 180 that fast. It was hard for me to swallow, and I couldn't believe that. I honestly thought that it was a joke until I got home and I seen that my father had already packed, and he was loading up the new Chrysler LeBaron, and he was going to be taking that car. He was moving out. So he tells me that, he will be there for me and all this stuff, all the same stuff that most parents tell their kids when they're separating. So it was crazy to go from new cars, new house, and experiencing all kinds of new things, to parents splitting up, dads moving out, losing a car. My mom did what she could in order to make the house happen, but given the fact that she was disabled and not working, we were also not able to get the house that was in escrow, so that we had to back out of the house as well. I was shocked. I was devastated, to be honest with you. I was sitting there thinking to myself, what happened? How can things go completely different? It was crazy that within 24 hours, life could change that fast. And here I am about to start high school with parents divorcing, just lost my grandmother. My mother was still trying to get back to health from cancer. And honestly, folks, I didn't even look forward to starting high school. Mom had told me that she may be able to afford to keep me in high school for just my 9th grade year, that we were going to be moving to Louisiana. As soon as I thought that things couldn't get any crazier, things were bad enough after my parents were divorcing, losing the house, losing that car, losing all kinds of things, I didn't think things could get worse. I wasn't looking forward to my 9th grade year. I knew I was going to be moving. that I had to explain why I wasn't moving into the neighborhood, what had happened, my parents were divorcing, etc. It was tough. And by then I was 15 years old and starting to get into some trouble. A lot of my friends that I had made in junior high were starting to get into some trouble as well. A lot of them turned to gangs. I was starting to hang out with people that basically had changed a lot. We were influenced by gang members. We were influenced by a lot of people that were getting into trouble. And I still remember it was a thing for your birthday. I begged to stay at home for my 15th birthday. I did whatever I could to stay at home. My mother didn't understand. And again, she was going through a lot. But if you went to school, you got jumped. And for my 15th birthday, I got my ass whooped. Let's be honest, folks. I had just bought a bag of Doritos and a Hawaiian Punch and got Hawaiian punched about 50 times. I didn't drop my can though. I didn't drop my can or my Doritos. I still had my Doritos, that's for sure. But things were hard and I did my best to stay out of trouble. I still tried to do the dancing and not be influenced by the gang members and all the things that I had around me. I hate to leave you on a sad note, folks. There will be a part 3 talking about my move to Louisiana and the things that I experienced there and how I got to Florida. Thank you so much for taking time out to watch these videos, and you will hear more from me soon.
Maybach music. Can anybody out there